Good morning. How is everyone on this Wednesday morning? I'm coming to you to talk all about what to do when you have a moody, disrespectful teenager, tween or teenager, because it starts usually in middle school when they start being snarky and moody and doesn't seem like anything that you can say is right. And it can be exhausting. It can be frustrating. It can be discouraging and actually just make you want to go in your bedroom and ugly cry. And that's what I call it, ugly crying. And I've done a lot of ugly crying over the years raising tweens and teens. And I've learned, with my oldest being 31, I've learned a better way. And I want to talk today about what will be helpful for you to understand and how you can bring the inflammation, so to speak, when it gets like you're fighting all the time and arguing all the time and disagreeing all the time, what you can do to bring that down and actually bring more connection into your relationship. I'm also here to answer any of your questions. So if you want to say hi and you want to post a question, I will try to get to it and answer it. If I don't in this next 30 minutes, I will answer it next week. And if you don't know me, my name is Cheryl Gould. I am the founder of Moms of Tweens and Teens, and I am also a parent educator. And I've been working with moms and parents for about 15 years now. And I love what I do. And I am also a parent of 3 that are older now. So I can offer you a lot of hope that I didn't have, especially with my oldest, when I was fighting and arguing and having all of those power struggles. So I love to share like what I learned looking back and being in the midst of it and what we can do differently. So welcome, whoever's here. And I want to just launch in. And if you want to say hi, I'm going to be switching back from my notes to answering your questions this morning. And I also want you to know that you can always submit your questions at Cheryl@momsoftweensandteens.com, and then I will answer them the following week. So just say on there, this is for the Facebook Live, so I know because I get so many emails every week. So today, all the emails I got was kind of interesting this week for this live was around disrespect. So I have some theories on that and some strategies and some things I'm going to share with you this morning to help you. So here's a few things that I want you to understand. But first, I want to read to you just a few of the emails that I got. I'm so tired of being on the receiving end of the glares and snarky attitude of my 13-year-old daughter. I used to be the light of her life, and now it feels like she can't stand me. Who feels that way, whether you have a son or a daughter? I know she loves me, but I feel like I want to cry constantly. Here's another one. My 16-year-old boy has a bad attitude. He's always angry with me. I can't hardly please him. Nothing I say is right. And he's constantly arguing with me. We're yelling and we're getting into the power struggles. It seems like our relationship is doomed. You know, she says it just feels like there's no hope in sight. And she said, I am not enjoying any part of being a mom right now. So maybe you're here and you're like, boy, I totally relate with that. Maybe some of you are here and you're like, well, you know, things are okay. You know, I get a little bit of that. Wherever you're at, what I'm going to share today can be very helpful to you. So what I want to start with is the 4 leading causes of why your tween or teen acts the way that they do. I wish I would have known this back when my oldest was a tween and we were arguing so often and butting heads and fighting. And what I like about understanding these things is you won't take it so personally. I was taking it so personally, and like it felt like it was being done to me. And then I thought, I must be doing something terribly wrong that this is happening. So when we can understand what's going on with them and why they act the way that they do, we can normalize some of it. And what happens when we have a deeper understanding of what's going on, then it brings our reactivity and our anxiety down. Because what happens is our kids are acting like this. And if you're like me, I would panic. In a sense, I would be very anxious. It would be like, my kid's talking to me this way. They're so disrespectful. Oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. Then we play it forward, which I talked about last week. Then we fortune tell. So this kid is never going to be respectful. If they ever get married, they're going to be so disrespectful to their wife. We end up catastrophizing and building it up in our heads. So in order to just normalize a little bit of this, it will help us. Now, I just want you to know, I'm not saying you don't do anything about it. And I'm going to talk about that as well. Okay. So 4 leading causes. Number 1, their brain is rewiring. They know now, because of all of the neuroscience and the neuroimaging techniques, that there is a lot going on in their brain. Now, the biggest thing that is happening in their brain that is fascinating is the amygdala is lit up. And the amygdala is that fight, flight, or freeze response. That's why they can be impulsive. That's why I don't want to say they don't, but they struggle to regulate their emotions. And a big part of that is because the amygdala is lit up. Now, what they understand about the brain is they can see where all of the blood flow is going. So think of a race car with no brakes and steering. Now, the prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain that is the brakes and steering. So if you have a kid that is not remembering, somebody wrote me about that, like, my kid is not remembering anything. They're super disorganized. I have to constantly remind them. They lose things. They're impulsive. They don't connect cause and effect. That is why kids that are this age, they are so in the moment. They don't have a perspective. And this speaks to kids that are depressed as well. And that's the danger zone when they're depressed, because they don't have that perspective of the future getting better. They are so in the here and now that they can't think ahead. So they make mistakes because they're not connecting the cause and effect of what might happen if they make that choice. That's why kids will often do really dumb things, especially when they're in a crowd, because it's like their IQ goes down a notch with each kid that is added. Studies show that they get, if I can use the word, stupider and stupider and stupider, but, they're just not. And I say that in a very compassionate way towards our kids, because it's just, they're impulsive. They're not thinking. So it's really important to understand that. And that will help you go, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. They struggle to regulate the emotions as well. So because that amygdala is lit up, you're going to notice that they can go from 0 to 150 very quickly. They can escalate very quickly. So not to take that personally. And the research suggests that they're not making these choices, these poor decisions, are being respectful on purpose. I want you to know that I believe with all my heart, and that research shows, kids want to do well. They want to succeed. You might have a kid that they blow up and you get in a big fight with them, only to have them come back and apologize later, and they feel really badly about it. Why? Because they struggle to regulate those emotions. I also want you to know that they need to learn how to regulate those emotions. You think about us, who here struggles to not yell when they're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling triggered, when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, my reaction, I just went from 0 to 150 based on what just happened. And so I'll talk a little bit about how we can help ourselves when this is happening as well. So that is very important to know. And as we know, thankfully, we hear more about their brain starts, and I will hold out hope for you because it does start rewiring and it starts connecting every year. So a lot of times you'll notice in middle school, it's tough. They're really moody, their hormones are raging, all those things are going on, their brain is rewiring. And every year they're starting to make those connections more and more. And they say 25, but actually there's still more wiring that happens in their brain after 25, but pretty much everything is connected at 25. So they're going to have mood swings. They're going to have angry outbursts. They're going to have crying for no reason. You might have a daughter, even a son, like, oh my gosh, they start crying and I can't figure out what's going on. It seems like it just comes out of nowhere. They may be impulsive, struggling with executive functioning, and struggling to emotionally regulate. Our job as parents is to help them to make those connections. And there's ways that we can do that. Number two, another reason, one of the leading causes of disrespect is that your kids are struggling for independence. They don't want to be under your control. Maybe you have a kid that's like, just wait till I'm 18. Like, hey, I got some news for you. Or maybe you're actually scared when they turn 18 about what that's going to mean for them. I know some of you are in that position, but they want their independence, but they still need you. So they're in conflict because while they want to make their own decisions, they aren't fully able to do that. So it creates this push and this pull. And that can really cause a lot of conflict. I'm going to list some things. They don't want to be told what to do. Honestly, I don't really like to be told what to do either. When my husband tells me what to do, I'm like, hey, buddy, that's not working very well for me. They want to be their own boss, even if they lack the skills to do that. They don't want us in their business. They become much more private at this age. Maybe you have a kid and you're like, they used to talk to me and tell me everything, and now they're so private and they only want to talk to their friends. That is developmental, and that's necessary. And they also will be very reactive when we tell them no. So I want you to know that don't expect them to agree with you. They're going to disagree. They don't like to hear no. And you don't have to convince them to agree with you because you're probably not going to get that because they are fighting for independence. And that can be very frustrating. And that can cause a power struggle because you're wanting to get them to agree with you that your way is right, but they're not going to give that to you. Why? Because they're fighting for independence, right? And they're not going to say, oh yeah, mom, you're right. Because that pull to be independent is so strong and it's so necessary. They're also going to try on new behaviors at this age. So you might notice, it's funny because things seem to go in waves and it's back to school and especially girls are going shopping and moms are saying to me, this is driving me nuts because they care more about what their friends think about their clothes. They can't buy anything and use their own mind without, taking a picture and showing it to their friends, and maybe they like it, but the friend says, nah, and so they don't get it. And they're like, why do they do that? Well, remember, this age is an age where they really want to fit in and they want to belong. And so they're going to adopt new behaviors. They're going to try new fads. I remember when I was in high school, preppy was really in. It was a terrible look on me, but I wanted to belong. I wanted to fit in, so I wore it. And then finally, I started getting my own style and getting away from that. Why? Because I had learned how to integrate into a group and I had learned how to stand apart. And that's what our kids need to do. So they're going to try on different behaviors. Sometimes kids at this age start swearing, and it can be really upsetting for moms. I totally understand that. But their friends might be talking like that. They might be trying it on. I'm not saying that that's okay. What I am saying is having more of an understanding of it is going to help you to not go to that dark place and catastrophize, but you're going to have more of an understanding about why this is happening. They're also wanting to define what they believe. I just interviewed, and I put it on the page, I just interviewed Dr. Michelle Borba, who wrote the book Thrivers. And it was a great interview. And I'll put it on the page again because I highly recommend that you listen to it. She's a best-selling author. She's been a Today Show contributor over 150 times. She's been on Dr. Phil. She's been all over the place. And one of the things that she said, which I preach a lot about, is at this age, they are asking the question, who am I? Who am I? And they're trying to differentiate who they are and separate from who you are. So this is why they disagree sometimes. They don't do it consciously, but they may disagree with your values. They may disagree with some of your beliefs right now. And we can go, oh, right? And start to panic. Wait, I didn't raise you this way. Why are you starting to go in this direction? I can't tell you how common this is. So don't panic. And that is part of what they're trying to do. And the more that we tell them actually that they're wrong and try to correct them and get them to come over to seeing things our way, oftentimes the stronger they're going to go in the other direction. And I want to say, believe me, I have been there. I have experienced it firsthand when I was panicking, and I was like, no, you're seeing things all wrong. And it just makes them go the other way. Why? Because they don't feel heard. They don't feel like we're seeking to get to know them and understand them. And that is why listening can be so powerful. Number 3, they lack the skills and maturity for navigating emotions and conflict. Disrespect is teaching your kids how to verbalize what they want in a respectful way, and to have those breaks in steering, and to be able to enter into a conversation around the conflict, but they don't know how to do that. So if we're not modeling it, we don't know how to do conflict, if we don't know how to stay calm and not overreact, then we're not going to be modeling that for our kids. And so a big part of my work with my oldest when she was a tween and a teen was to learn how to get in touch with my anger, because I didn't think I was angry. I just thought she was angry all the time. And how to enter into that conflict, because I was a big conflict avoider. Maybe you are too. And I mean, I still hate conflict. But I know in order to have healthy relationships that are actually close and connected, we have to learn how to work through it. And that takes work on our part. We didn't learn it. Most of us who here learned how to deal with conflict in their family, not many of us. And so that's a process that we need to go through is, how might I be responding and reacting in a way that's not helpful? Rather than looking at my kid and thinking I need to fix their behavior, how might I be fueling this? How might I be entering into this in a way that's not healthy and is not helpful? So that's always a really good question. And we don't have to shame ourselves. We don't have to go to that place, but we can be curious about it. What might I be doing in the way that I'm interacting with my kid that's not helping? And what do I need to learn from this? And how can I grow from this? and say to my kid, you know what? I'm learning how to do this right along with you. I don't want to be fighting and arguing constantly. It doesn't feel good to me. So I really want to say, I'm going to work on this. And I would love for us to work on resolving conflict and working through this together. So the truth is that disrespectful behavior is one of the inappropriate ways kids, especially teenagers, try to solve their problems. So I just want you to think about it. It's one of the ways they try to solve their problems and also get what they want. And they don't know how to do it. So it comes out, it just comes out, right? Number 4, this is kind of my take on why every email I got this week was around disrespect. And I'm a big believer that kids right now that are going back to school are feeling really stressed and anxious. And they have been in quarantine. They haven't been seeing their friends as much. They've been doing online learning. They haven't been as much with social groups. And many of our kids are feeling a lot of anxiety. Well, disrespect often manifests itself, or anxiety rather, often manifests itself as disrespectful behavior. So I want you to be curious about what might really be going on with your tween or teen. What might be underneath that anger? Now on Mott's University, MOTTS university.com, in our membership group, I do this whole thing on the anger iceberg. So I want you to think of like an iceberg, and at the top is anger. So your tween or your teen is expressing a lot of anger and they're acting out. But what I want to challenge you is to think about, because anger is usually a secondary emotion. And I want you to get curious about what is underneath. What might be going on underneath the surface? Because tweens and teens, remember, the amygdala is lit up. They don't know how to talk about what they're feeling. They often don't know what they're feeling. And so it comes out as anger, and they lash out at you because why? Because you're the safe place. They're not going to do that usually with their friends. They're going to do it with us because we feel safe. They know that we're not going to go away. And so that we're usually getting the brunt of it. But they also have greater pressure and they have more responsibilities. And they're also involved usually in social media, which adds a whole nother layer to that. Anxiety and wanting to fit in and wanting to belong, and then their homework, and then just knowing. I mean, I remember my son would say, oh my gosh, I don't want to grow up. I see you and dad. And he would say this in middle school. And I said, why don't you want to grow up? And he's like, because I'm seeing you and dad, and being an adult, you have so many responsibilities. They maybe can't articulate that, but they're thinking that and they're feeling that. So we want to understand what's going on. So get curious about what might be going on underneath the surface. So I want to ask you a few questions, and I want you to think about this. And I'm going to go over to what you're, if any of you have asked any questions. I can stay on for just a little bit longer, and then I have an appointment. But we can pick up on this next week. I also have a disrespect. It's $10. I have a disrespect course that I did, workshop, and you can get a lot more through that. I'll put it in the comments. I kept the price really, really low. But that I go into a little bit more detail about disrespect. So I just want you to know that's available if you're interested. But I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Okay, what might really be going on underneath the surface? What is truly disrespectful behavior? because we have to pick our battles. So you have to, maybe, eye rolling, you don't like it, but you can let that go. Because if you're focusing on everything all at once, you're going to be getting into power struggles constantly. So think about developmentally, what might be developmental, and what do I really need to address? What might be, like I just said, what might be going on underneath the surface? Also, what skills might they be lacking? They might be lacking some conflict resolution skills. They might be lacking some different skills with school and being disorganized, and that actually causes them anxiety. So think about, what do they need to develop, and what do they really need? What do they really need? Now, I'm going to just say briefly, kids need to be listened to. They need to be heard. Yes, even when they're angry, even when they're fighting. I have found in my own life and working with hundreds of moms, I will tell you that the disrespect actually comes down when your kid feels like you're really listening to them. Now you're like, well, Cheryl, no, they're just, they're constantly blah, 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 and I get it. I get that. It's like, but, try it. You can just say things like, I hear you're really angry. What is it that you want me to know right now? I want to play my video game. I know, I hear, I get it. You want to be on your video game 24/7. Okay, let's talk about it. What do you think's fair? Get them to talk, hear what they have to say. Because when you do that, and even if, you might not say yes to something, but you'll be amazed at just when you listen to them and you validate what they're saying, and you say, I get it, you want to be on. See, if they're arguing for more time, let's just use gaming as an example. Where do we tend to go right away? We want to go to no. They're fighting, they're pushing against me, we're in conflict now. I tell them no, but we skip over the listening piece. And so if we can listen and lean in and hear what they have to say, and then say, well, what do you think is fair? Well, what about, how are you going to get your homework done? What's this going to look like? So you have to be willing to kind of be in that sometimes messy discussion, and then say, well, this is what I want. What do you want? How can we have to be sort of flexible. And then after you've listened to them and you've heard them out, then you might want to say, you know what? Thanks for sharing all that. And still, there's going to only be whatever you decide, whatever you feel comfortable with. Or, you know what? You're not going to be able to game because you need to work on your homework. And then I would say, lastly, then I'll come over to your questions, see if you have any questions. Lastly, I want to ask you, are you focusing more on the negative than the positive things that your kid is doing? And I put in the Facebook feed on our page it's actually affirmations, and there's adjectives, and there's lunchbox love notes in there, and there's some other things. Because what our kids really need is, they need us to focus more on what they're doing well. And when I did the interview with Dr. Michelle Borba, one of the things that she said in there, which I could not agree with more, she said, if parents take away one thing, it's to focus more on their strengths rather than their weaknesses, because we want to compensate for their weaknesses. See, we tend to, that math grade is low, you're doing this, you're doing that, which brings down their confidence. Yes, those things need to be dealt with, but are you focusing more on what their strengths are and being curious about that, trying to plug them into things that make them feel really good about themselves, and saying thank you for this. So I want to challenge this week for you to listen more, practice. Listening is like speaking a totally different language. It is not that easy. Listen, sounds easy, but I'm telling you, I'm still working on it. I want to interject all the time. And I try to really listen. I try to be slow to say no to things and just hear it out, whoever it is, what they have to say, and not jump to conclusions, make assumptions. And also, then we need to also think about maybe this kid, your kid is driving you nuts so much that it's hard to see anything good right now. Anything. It's those kids, believe it or not, the kids that go for so much negative attention that need the most affirmation. And it's just tough to find it. Start really small, and make it specific. And that is what the bundle that I put together helps you to do. Because I will tell you, I grew up in more of a perfectionist or critical home. I'm not great at encouragement. I'm always seeing what needs to be fixed. So in myself, with my kids, with my whoever it is, that's where my brain goes first, is like, okay, what needs to be fixed and improved here? And I think that we're like that as moms because we carry a heavy weight of wanting to do a great job with our kids, but then we tend to focus more on those weaknesses and those things that need to be fixed rather than their strengths. So I am here for you. I am so grateful for you for being on this page, for showing up, and just know that you are not alone. And be very gentle and kind to yourself this week. And I will see you back here next time. Thanks so much for being with me. Love you gals. All right.